Hello children, welcome back to an exciting session of social movements in our times, second part, which we have discussed in the previous class. We are now going to discuss the second part of social movements in our times and more about the movements which have taken place in our country also. We have discussed that there were so many movements, social movements all over the world have taken place after the Second World War, but it was a time of prosperity, development and growth for most of the countries. But in many countries there were also the times of tensions due to the protest movements which have been taken up by certain sections of the society to acquire their rights. Those movements we have discussed in the previous class. Now, today we are going to discuss about such social movements which have taken place in our country. Children, let us now understand what we have discussed in the previous class in detail and also what we will discuss in this class. In the previous class, we have discussed about the civil rights movements of 1960s, role of Luther Martin King in civil rights movements, black women demand their rights, human rights in USSR, Vietnam conflicts and environmental movements such as Greenpeace movement. In this class, we shall discuss about Bhopal gas disaster related movements, Narmada Bachao Andolan, Silent Valley movements from the year 1973 to 1985, Iraq movement in Andhra Pradesh, social mobilization on human rights and Meera Paibi movement. Let us now discuss about Bhopal gas tragedy related movements first. In Bhopal in the year 1984, a poisonous gas leaked out of the Union Carbide factory. So, due to that so many people died, thousands of people died and there were several victims who had the deformities, and from that time even there are certain victims who have been continuously suffering even till this time also. So, those people started protesting against the tragedy and they wanted certain compensations. Right from the beginning, people of Bhopal have been fighting for the four main demands. What were those demands? Proper medical treatment of the victims. They wanted proper medical treatment, the hospitalization charges and all for the victims. Adequate compensation based on international standards, as the company was a multinational company. So, it was a multinational company, it was named as Dow company later, and as it was an international company and a multinational company, they wanted the compensation as per the international standards, fixing responsibility for the disasters on management of the multinational company. They wanted to fix the responsibility and punish those people who have done the mistake of such a huge tragedy which has killed thousands of people, and also to take the steps to prevent such kind of disasters. So, what were the results of the people's protest or people's demand in Bhopal? There were no major achievements, they could not achieve major things. Let us see what are those. So, there were no major achievements in the sense victims were still suffering from its effects and compensation is still not paid as per the international standards, and that too it was not paid to all the affected people equally. There was no justice done and it also failed to prosecute and punish the management. So, though the protests were taken place, but still there were no steps taken to punish the management who has done that crime by the government, and they do not have adequate policy or mechanism to eliminate the possibility of such disasters in the future. So, there were no steps taken by the government or by the courts to stop such kind of disasters. There was no permanent solution that has come into existence to stop such kind of disasters. So, though there were demands, but the protests were not up to the mark successful. But what they have achieved, let us see. People today need to use international laws to fight against the problems that the factory workers and women face. So, many people across the globe boycotted the products made by the company and signed a petition against it. So, this protest went up to international level, and many people across the globe, they started boycotting, not using the products of the Dow company. Apart from that, multiple organizations from around the world also pointed out at unethical alliance of the Olympic body with Dow. So, the Olympic body, it has combined, it has merged with the Dow company, which was unethical, and many people protested for that issue also. Children, now let us see about the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Narmada Bachao Andolan also took place. Now children, let us see about Narmada Bachao Andolan, which also took place, where the dam has to be constructed over the Narmada river at various places, and people protested it against the construction of the dams after they have realized that there is not going to be any development, overall development for every section of the society. Children, now let us see about Narmada Bachao Andolan. Movements against dams on Narmada river. Building of large multipurpose dams was an integral part of India's development from 1950s. So, the government took up construction of dams at a large scale level, so that they felt that the construction of dams would control the floods, it will give huge water preservation is also possible, electricity can be generated. So, they felt it will give overall development to all the sections of the society. People also started dreaming. What were their dreams? They felt that huge benefits will be there if the dams were built, and electricity could be available to everyone, water would be available to everyone for agriculture as well as drinking purposes, flood control will be there. So, people felt that there will be number of benefits out of the construction of the dams on the Narmada river. Very soon they realized that thousands of trees and animals and acres of fertile fields and people who had been displaced to build these dams, and also they realized that the investment in these dams did not yield adequate results. What they were expected was much less than what was actually invested, and even it did not give adequate results. So much of the money was invested, but a little result was found, means they have invested huge crores and crores of rupees over the construction, but it did not give adequate results also. The cost of the dams was huge, and often it increased due to delay in construction and price rise. So, every time whenever the construction started, it took years and years of time, and when years and years passed, all the prices increased, and further the cost what was put over the construction of the dams, it further increased. And the next is, they seldom irrigated the land, initially proposed to be irrigated. So, it did not irrigate as much as the engineers felt that it would irrigate huge acres of land, but it could not irrigate those many acres of land. The amount of land, the total area of land which was irrigated was less than what was expected by the engineers and by the government. Children, people started protesting, and who stood up displaced from the project, they demanded fair compensation to those who owned the land and also to those who lived over there. So, people started protesting against the construction of the dams, and they said that they wanted fair compensation because they have been displaced, and those who own the land, they should be compensated, means whatever they have lost, that should be replaced, is called as compensation, and also who were living there also should be compensated. They also demanded proper rehabilitation with land in return for the land lost, and also afforestation, that is planting of trees to compensate for the loss of forest under the dam. So, they demanded two things, one it is the compensation, another thing is they want the replacement of whatever the land that they have lost, that should be given to them, and also the afforestation also should be taken up by the government, so that whatever they have lost could be brought back. the leaders decided to oppose the very construction of the dam. There were intense protest, mobilization, marches, hunger fast and international campaign against the construction of Sardar Sarovar Dam, and hence World Bank also decided to take back the funding which it also was investing the money as per the request of the government. But when it saw these many protests all over going on against the construction of the dam, it also has taken up the funding, taken back the funding which it has done for the Sardar Sarovar Dam also. And people also realized that what they have realized is that there is no adequate land available to compensate for the loss, and it was really not possible to rehabilitate all the displaced people properly. So, now there was a huge confusion. People were displaced from those places, but there is no land to provide them back. And there was a huge confusion, there were huge tensions all over because people who were displaced were not settled properly. So, there were huge protests for Narmada Bachao Andolan as per the Narmada Bachao Andolan, and also as per the against the construction of Sardar Sarovar Dam also. Children, she is Medha Patkar, one of the leaders of NBA Narmada Bachao Andolan, talking about the organization in the year 2010. She was a great leader who protested against the NBA. So, to conclude, we can say that it was not the question of compensation or rehabilitation, but one of the faulty notions of development. We cannot say that construction of dams would give the development. There should be overall development which was not possible because of the construction of the dams. It resulted in unsustainable use of the natural resources also. So, the natural resources were cut down inequitably, there was no justice in cutting down the natural resources done. It created an environment which was not suitable for sustainable development. It also made the poor farmers and the tribal people into unskilled manual laborers without enhancing their quality of life. So, they turned out, the poor farmers turned out to be manual laborers. So, their position degraded. It did not rose up. The construction of the dams did not give any development in the lives of farmers, but it degraded them in their life. Again, they became the strugglers in their life and who had to compensate for all their livelihood, which we cannot call it as development. So, though it failed to attempt at stopping the building of Sardar Sarovar Dam, the NBA movement succeeded in forcing to think about the nature of development, whether it was in the interest of the poor or the rich or the powerful. So, they could not stop the construction of the Sardar Sarovar Dam, but the NBA gave them an understanding to the people of the world, the governments, that the construction of the dams is not going to give them any sort of development, and even to the rich, poor or the powerful people also, it is not leading towards the development of everyone. It is leading to the development of only certain section of people. If dams are constructed or any other projects are constructed at the cost of lives of the people. Now, let us understand about the Silent Valley movement. Silent Valley movement took place in the state of Kerala, in the southern state. So, between the year of 1973 to 1985. Why these forests were called as silent forest? The reason is that there were no crickets found in this forest. The cricket bird is not found in this forest. So, because there was no chirping movement, the forest would be silent. So, it is called as silent forest. Lion-tailed macaque and many other species of insects and birds are unique to it. This movement took place in Kerala, as I said, and many educated people realized that the dam construction across the Silent Valley is not going to give them the notion of development, and they also felt that it is going to be disastrous for the rare species of animals and plants that lived in that valley. So, a major development against the dams in favor of saving the Silent Valley People across the state were mobilized by KSSP, Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, was supporting the people. It is an organization which was supporting the people for popularizing, which was working for popularizing of science and learning among the people. They went to the court also and they appealed against the clear felling of trees in the project area, and Kerala High Court, it ordered to stop the clear felling of the trees. And in view of several protests, and government finally decided, in view of several protests, the government finally decided to give up the dam projects and convert the Silent Valley into the national park in the year 1985. So, it was a huge success. So, it was a success from the side of the Kerala people who succeeded by protesting for the Silent Valley, and they were successful. The court judgment has come that to convert that Silent Valley into a national park. Children, now let us go for studying about anti-Arak movement which took place in combined Andhra Pradesh in the previous times. Arak is nothing but toddy, and women protesters, they were distressed, they were in distress, and they doesn't want their husbands or sons to go for drinking the toddy and still get into the depressed life, and they wanted to stop the consumption of toddy in their villages. This was a women's movement which took place. Anti-Arak movement, a women's movement in Andhra Pradesh. So, it demanded the end of toddy or Arak. It was the movement of women who were inspired and wanted to end their miserable life which was created because of toddy or Arak. The victory was possible through education. These women attended the adult education earlier and they found a place to discuss their problems. They went for protesting against the consumption of toddy. After the protest by women across the state, Arak was officially banned in October 1993 and total prohibition was imposed in the year 1995. So, who were these women? These women belonged to the poorest sections of the society, from Dalit caste, deeply tormented by increasing addiction to Arak among their husbands and other men folk. They went for literacy classes and often they would discuss the problems there. These literacy classes gave them a place to discuss their lives and build networks to contacts, and finally they protested against the toddy consumption and they wanted to end the consumption of toddy, which created the tensions in their life, which created the miserable life for them. So, they wanted to end the consumption of toddy completely from their life. Thus, the women of the most deprived class would stand up against the most powerful and violent lobby of Arak, manufacturers and sellers, who not only had money and muscle powers, but also political powers. So, against whom these women were fighting? Against the powerful people. They were all, and still they were fighting against the powerful and educated society, but their literacy levels, as they have increased, and also they have the unity among them which gave them success. Now, let us go for understanding about the other movement which took place in the northeastern states, which is Manipur. Social movements in Manipur. In Manipur, women fought against some laws which allowed the armed forces to suppress people without any process of judicial review of their action. So, here it is Manipur, this is one of the northeastern state. So, in Manipur, women fought against the armed forces, against a certain law which was made by the army or the armed forces, which unnecessarily harassed the people of that place. Manipur is now composed of two geographical terrains, the valley and the hills. But it was before independence, the valley was under princely rule and the hill was relatively autonomous, inhabited by the tribal population. So, valley was under the princely state, whereas the hill was under the control of the tribal people. They ruled themselves independently. In the year 1891, the British established their control over the region. though the king continued to rule over the kingdom. The kingdom of Manipur signed a merger agreement with India in the year 1949 and Manipur was made a part of India. This agreement was disrupted by many tribal people who argued that they had been autonomous and did not agree to be the part of India. So, tribal people were not interested in the merger and they wanted their independence. So, one of the laws, so the government of India, it has sent armed forces in Manipur to maintain law and order in the place and the law was called as AFSPA, that is Armed Forces Special Power Act in the year 1958. According to that law, the security forces were given the right to arrest or shoot the people simply under the suspicion, that is doubtfulness of being involved in anti-national activities. If they have a doubt against certain people who may be anti-national, the armed forces were given the right to either arrest or kill them only because of the doubtfulness. So, this was protested by the women folk of that place. People, especially women, protested that their sons and husbands are being picked up and tortured under the suspicion of being against the nation and even daughters and mothers themselves are also being abused. So, the protest against the custodial death of 32-year-old woman of Manipur, Thangja Manorama, gained widespread attention to this movement of Manipur. Now, let us study the other movement of Manipur, which is 𝗬𝗑𝗡 movement. 𝗬𝗑𝗡 is a Meitei language. Literally, it can be translated as torch bearers. 𝗬𝗑𝗡 means torch bearers. It originated as a movement to prevent public disorder due to alcohol abuse in the year late 1970s. But it soon became a movement for human rights with the massive deployment of Indian armed forces to counter the armed movement for Manipur independence in the early 1980s. So, 𝗬𝗑𝗡 movement has been started to stop the toddy or the liquor consumption even in the year 1970s, but it went for the social movement and it also combined with it the other movement which was against the armed forces law. 𝗬𝗑𝗡 movement, it first started by the women to stop the liquor consumption by the menfolk, but soon it gained the national importance and state importance, so that it does not want, the women protesters does not want the armed forces to do any torture or any sort of problems to be created for them. So, they started protesting against the armed forces, which was called as 𝗬𝗑𝗡 movement. It originated as a movement to prevent the public disorder due to alcohol abuse in the year 1970s, but it soon gained a movement of human rights with massive deployment of armed forces. The armed forces were deployed there and to counter the armed movement for Manipur, the movement has been started in the year early 1980s. So, 𝗬𝗑𝗡 took to patrolling the streets at night, every ward, every lane, junction, group of women sat on vigil against threat and disruption to peace in the community. So, there were no activists or politically inclined people, they were women. They are ordinary women who take on themselves the traditional responsibility for the well-being of the community. So, they carried the torches in their hands, they were not having any other weapons with them, only they were torches and the light which they wanted to use as a weapon for the protest, and there were bamboos with them. So, gradually this movement demanded the act of AFSPA to be revoked, and the women have expressed their struggle in different forms, from boycott of elections to sitting on relay hunger strikes. So, in this movement women went for different activities, such as they went for hunger strike and they also demanded the elections not to take place, and they wanted the revoke of the armed forces from their place. One such woman, she went for hunger strike for about 10 years and still she is under the house arrest. Children, so we have today discussed about different social movements which took place in our country in the previous years. So, in the previous class we have discussed about the social movements which were related to the entire world, and in today's class we have discussed about the social movements of our times in our country, okay, such as we have discussed about Manipur, we have discussed about the Arak movement of combined Andhra Pradesh, Narmada movement, isn't it? So, I hope you have grasped the concept and you are able to get an understanding about what we have discussed in the class. So, let us go for the evaluation part, children. The first question is, what are the basic features of social protest movements? The second one, what were the 4 demands of Bhopal gas tragedy victims? The third one is, write about the advantages and the problems faced by the people due to the construction of dams. Fourth one is, discuss in few lines about the Arak movements in Andhra Pradesh. And the fifth one is, explain the 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 movement. Children, I hope you have got the understanding of this lesson, you have understood the lesson in a better way, and for better understanding of the concepts, refer the worksheets and also go through the textbooks. So, for better understanding of the concepts, solve the worksheets. Please visit the official site of SIET for the worksheets. Children, with this we have completed the lesson. Let us meet in the next session. Until then, thank you. Take care.